Right. If you're a real estate agent that is wondering, how do I get face to face with as many buyer prospects as possible? Open houses are probably one of the best ways to do that. We're going to go through today and we're going to share with you some ideas of exactly what Josh is doing and has done in multiple markets that is a systematic plan of action that I know will get you some results. All right, Josh, this is a conversation I know is going to help some agents because this is not just something where we're speaking from theory. You've had three specific buyers that walked in open houses, ended up being closed contracts. And so we're going to talk about the specific strategy that you guys are using that is converting. And it's not only something that helps with the converting on the buyer side, this is what we're doing to really get as much exposure for your sellers and reduce your acquisition costs on the buyer side. So, you don't mind, tell everybody a little bit about you, kind of the transitions that you've done and where you've done this in multiple markets, and we'll get into the open houses.
Yes, well, and first of all, thank you, Jimmy, for having me. It's super pleasure to do this with you and provide
Yeah,
some
man.
value to the people out there. So my journey kind of started at the young age of 13. I learned Google Ads from an aunt who was an entrepreneur, kind of taught me about marketing. This was right at the time Google started allowing small business owners to run their own ads. And so I was able to learn from that. Actually, through high school, ran some Google ads on the sides for other small local businesses to make some money when you're in high school. At 18, I started my first business, predominantly marketing through Google Ads. Back then, it was very cheap. It was super surprising how well it worked because I started getting calls from CEOs of fairly large insurance companies saying they wanted to work with me. And I was like, okay, there might be something here. Um, I transitioned away from being a small business owner and did some other stuff for a while. And then about 2016, my wife was in mortgage lending and then she got into real estate. In about 2016, she convinced me to go ahead and get my real estate license. So about 2016, I got in the real estate business and we started doing fairly well. But the interesting thing is I forgot everything I learned about digital marketing. And I started looking at all the people in my brokerage that were successful and emulating what they were doing. And I found out later that probably wasn't the best idea because I really didn't understand that they weren't actually doing that well. When it came to a profit standpoint, it looked like they were, but that wasn't the case. So in 2018, we kind of had a realization. We tore apart our business and really started looking at why we weren't making a whole lot of money. We were selling a good amount of homes, but we really weren't seeing the profit. And where this really played out is we wanted to scale and grow, and the money just wasn't there. And so, really, what we boiled it down to is our cost per acquisition had got way, way too high. And some of that was, lead generation companies, Zillow, Realtor.com. But the bigger one we found was actually lead nurture. We were paying all these companies to help us nurture clients to get them to the closing table. And so I tore everything apart, kind of having a background in business. We looked at everything, evaluated it. We kind of adopted a KAIZEN business strategy where it was really based on small continuous improvements along the way that really lended itself really well to real estate just because there's so many steps along the lead nurture process to get somebody to the closing table. And a lot of what we found is if we could decrease our lead cost and then decrease our nurturing, how much that cost, we could make a lot more money. So we started implementing these things, and a big part of that was open houses because let's face it, even if we didn't have a listing, we could find a listing to hold open. And it was really easy to build systems using organic social media that helped not only get buyers from those open houses, but also market to the neighborhood to try to pick up listings down the road. So I think we'll get into all that here pretty soon. Um, but in about, I think it was 2022, we relocated. I went to a market. So I went from the Portland metro market in Portland, Oregon, fairly big market, to the Black Hills of South Dakota, much different market. Got my broker's license here, started implementing a lot of the things that we had done in Oregon, and pretty much saw the same results. I will say it was a little bit different. Surprisingly, actually, in South Dakota, we had a much better conversion rate, but I think it was because it was a lot easier to make relationships with people here. People seem to be a lot more trusting. And so it was easier to build relationships in South Dakota than Portland, but we were basically able to emulate what we did in Portland and show the same results here in South Dakota. And then in last year, so 2024 in September, I wrote a book on organic marketing and basically kind of put a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today in that book. And that's what got me to this point, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm in the middle of the book, so it's really good, Josh. So I appreciate everything you're doing, what you're giving back to agents. And what I love about what we're going to talk about today is that it solves a lot of problems. I mean, I think this is the thing. There is a lot of vanity in numbers of closed volume, but very few people talk about profitability. And so this that we're going to talk about today is specifically on open houses. This worked in two different markets for you. So this is something where anybody that's watching this and anywhere in the country, I believe, is going to be able to model some of these things. Obviously, there's always some local adjustments, but utilize this system to lower their acquisition costs and also to be able to put their listings in a position and that they can get them sold faster and for a higher price. So I'm excited to talk about this. Let's start from the beginning. And you mentioned this. I do want to have at that. We have a lot of agents that I work with that maybe they don't have listings, but they are out there and they're helping other agents with listings. So don't get discouraged. You can make this work with other listings. And if you do these things, all these things we're talking about for a listing agent, they're going to love you and you're going to get all the open houses you could ever want. So just know that. But let's talk about once the listing's taken. Let's start right there. What happens and what does the process and the system look like once you take the listing?
So our whole goal is to get as much exposure as we can from every single listing that we do. And a big part of that goes with open houses because it's one way that we can actually leverage the third-party platforms to promote our listings. So anytime you schedule an open house, that blast is going to go out. You're going to get eyeballs on it. So, but before we schedule an open house, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start filming a bunch of short form content that we can post to our social media platforms and all of our different channels. And we do it a little bit different. We don't do just sold, just listed, just pending. We don't do any of those because what we found is those don't get reach. Part of it is we've seen social media platforms go to a much more intent SEO driven algorithm. Putting just posted or just listed, I'm sorry, up there, it doesn't get any reach. And even if it does, it doesn't get any eyeballs. So what we started doing is we started shooting educational content and framing the listing around that. And what I mean by that is there was a house we had listed, had a really interesting heating and air conditioning system. It was a ground source heat pump that was super energy efficient, and it wasn't very common to that area. So we did a couple short form videos on that, explaining why it was good, the benefits of it, and how this house had it. The backdrop to all those videos was the listing was going to be live, and if anybody was interested in that, then they would be able to purchase this home. We also shot a couple of those videos, and it was to promote the open house. And what we saw with that is because we were talking about things that were more interesting than just listed, people started engaging a lot more with that. It also resonated a lot more with the search engines because people were always looking for more efficient homes and all those type of things that go along with Google keywords.
Yeah.
So all those videos that we're shooting, we're trying to do it from a much more creative approach than just like, hey, we just listed this house, come to the open house. And the same thing like with our verbiage on static post, we tried to avoid open house. We used open invites, things that were different, that resonated, that were much different. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, but one of the most important things that we found is to use pattern interrupts within real estate marketing because it really sets yourself apart from every other agent. Because let's face it, if you're driving through neighborhoods on a Saturday and you see 16 open house signs, and then all of a sudden you see one that says open invite, it's at least going to pique your attention enough that maybe you're going to show up. So that was one thing we were doing is we were filming a little bit different content that still promoted the listing, but in a much different manner than what a lot of people in our markets were.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, I love, obviously, it sounds like you're utilizing the background and such a young age, starting with Google and understanding keywords in a different way than most people do and the pattern interrupt that you understand. When you're preparing, like for the post, what does your process look like for like the description of that post or the scripting of that post? Are you trying to research specific words or are you just kind of, trying to highlight the home?
So in all of my social media content, I don't follow trends. I don't do any of that. Everything I do is based off keyword research. And my goal with that is if I can get in front of my target audience and answer the questions that they have, that's going to provide a lot more value than look how good of a real estate agent I am. And the other goal is that if I'm providing that value and they're sharing it with other people, they're going to come back to me. So, with all of my social media posts, including stuff for open houses, I'm using the Google keyword tool to see what's being searched for in that area. trending things, that have to do with the housing category, stuff that when I post it up, hopefully it's going to resonate with my target market. I think that's also another important thing to note here is you have to look at your target market. So from specific open houses, if I know this neighborhood is going to have a much different demographic than this other one, obviously with fair housing in mind, I'm going to be catering, my posts and stuff that's going to resonate with that target market. It's one way that's driven leads much better for me. The other thing it does too is it allows me to really set myself apart in a listing presentation to explain this to the seller of, we're targeting specific people for your house. We're not just doing the spaghetti approach and throwing a sign in the front yard. We're really targeting who we think is going to be a good fit for your house.
Yeah, it's so good. Josh, I was on yesterday. I did an interview with Jason Pantana, and Jason and I were talking about some of the things he's doing with AI, and he was discussing with me how he's utilizing Grok instead of ChatGPT, just from a standpoint of that it has more of that, and he's actually going in and utilizing it on requesting it to give him the trends for whatever the market is for real estate conversations are happening, and just kind of to almost get in the water where the waves are coming, I guess you could say. And it was just
Yeah.
so interesting to me to see some of those things. And I know you're heavily involved with that. I don't want to get bogged down with that today. We'll do that on another conversation because I know you can bring some value there. But let's talk about now where we are as far as the listing's been taken. You shot your content. You started talking a little bit about the open house. What are you doing before the open house? There's some marketing of that, I would think.
Yeah, so one of the big things we're doing, and one of the strategies we used is how can we make one piece of marketing that we can use in multiple ways? So one thing we're going to do is we're going to put together what we call a neighborhood packet. And a neighborhood packet is basically just going to have the front cover is going to be the MLS sheet with all the stats. On that next page, we're actually going to have all those videos that we shot. We're going to have those listed with QR codes. And this is going to serve a purpose for at the open house, but before the open house, we're going to use this for door knocking. So obviously, in the last couple of years, with how fast the market has been moving, this wasn't always an option. But if we had the option and we had the time, we would be door knocking on the neighborhood, just telling, neighbors, hey, we're going to bring this one to market, or it is already on the market. We got an open house. If you have any friends or family that are interested in it, send them our way. The big thing with this is when we start our seller lead generation, because what we're doing is we're basically telling that neighbor, hey, in this packet on that back page, it's a breakdown of videos all about your neighbor's house. It's going to say everything about their, how much is their utility bills? How much are all these type of things? And the big thing that we're doing here is we're piquing their curiosity, because let's
Yeah.
face it, every nosy neighbor is going to be looking at that going, wait a second, what are they paying for their electric bill? So they're going to snap a picture, or they're going to go to that QR code and watch our video on that. And what they don't really know is that now they're in our social media algorithm as someone that might be interested in our content. So we've
Right.
already started nurturing neighbors now to potentially be seller leads down the road for us. And so
Yeah.
that's one thing we'll try to door knock. If you can't door knock, send a postcard with those QR codes. It's not as good. It doesn't build the
Yeah.
one-on-one relationship, but you're at least getting it. And it's much better than just sending an open house flyer in the mail, or even just going up and knocking on the door and we're doing an open house. Let's face it, once again, it's different. It's a selling feature to your sellers, and it's a selling feature to them. If they go down the road and they need a listing agent and you get that listing appointment, you can say, you understand part of the reason I'm here is because we're utilizing these tools to get that house sold, and that's why I'm here. So they obviously work. The proof is in the pudding there.
Yeah, Josh, what I love about this too, are you driving like the QR codes with those short form videos or those videos? Are those on social you're driving them to? Is it YouTube, or where is that? Where are those videos located?
So once again, this is where the target demo or target audience kind of comes into play. Um,
Right.
the whole answer is I don't have a perfect answer for this one.
Yeah.
We try to think about the person that would most likely want this house. What platform would they be on? And that's where we're going to post them. Um,
Right.
Now, if we are using today, we're just kind of talking about organic. If we start
Right.
talking about paid, that's going to change things, because then we're going to start talking about YouTube. So we can go to Google custom audiences, but I think that's for another podcast too. Um, but we're really trying to focus on where our target audience for this home, what platform, and that's probably what we're going to be using, unless we're doing some paid strategies on it.
Hey man, I see about three different interviews here. The paid YouTube stuff is just something that I'm really interested in. We'll get to that a little bit later. But what I love about this is, and what we've been doing is we're utilizing the QR codes to drive back towards specific platforms we're wanting to have more activity on. So in other words, a lot of times what we're doing with these is we're driving them back to Instagram, for instance, if we're trying to grow Instagram. Plus, it is a full view of who we are as agents or as a team or whoever it is that we're doing this for, and that way we drive them back there. It's almost like it's the proof over promise that I've heard so many people say. And it just gives them the ability to see that we're out there actively working. Like you say, it's our resume for that future listing as well. So you're doing this door knocking. That's kind of the pre-setup on everything. What does it look like? Obviously, that's preparing the neighborhood. Are you preparing the
Yeah.
house in a specific way or anything you're doing there?
Just typical stuff we would tell a seller prior to listing. One thing I'm really big on is I tell all my sellers, that main exterior front photo should be treated like a dating profile photo.
Right,
Because as you know, with technology and everything, we've got to stop people from just swiping by it.
right.
I'm big on curb appeal, planting flowers. One thing I like is painting the door a bright contrasting color. Anything that we can get so that front main MLS photo pops and hopefully stop somebody. Once again, my whole thing is like small continuous improvements. And so
Yeah,
over time, that's going to get more eyeballs on it. Obviously, the normal, get the house ready for listing, clear out the clutter, cleaning, all that type of stuff is kind of a non-negotiable.
yeah.
But really the exterior, making that front photo look really good. So adding some flowers, doing whatever we need to do so it really pops to try to get people to stop scrolling and click into the email if they're, someone that is interested in the house.
Yeah, man. So far, this is what I've loved, and I've never heard anyone say it this way, but leveraging all of those portals, Zillow, Realtor.com, all the places that will advertise the open house, which then puts that particular house obviously at the top of search on a lot of these, which is tremendous. And then also having those neighborhood packets, that's a great idea. So now we've done the pre-preparation for the open house. What does the day of look like? What does it look like at the open house that day? Signage, what does it look like when people show up? What does that look like?
So the first thing we're going to do just prior to like the night before, we're going to print off some 8 by 11 sheets of paper with those QR codes once again to the videos, and we're going to be posting those around the house as well. So, like for example, if you shot a video on the energy consumption of the house on a monthly average, and you filmed a video on that, we might put that by a really prominent light switch. And once again, we're looking for, think about like how would you the title of a YouTube video that makes somebody click.
Good.
We're going to put
Yeah.
that up as that's going to be like the title of this note card with the QR code. The other thing that I've found really works well is if whatever platform you're sending these to, if the branding is consistent. So, use the same headshot on those flyers that you use on the social media platform. The other thing that we've tested is putting like the logo for the social media. Platform. So, like the Instagram logo, the YouTube logo next to it. That does seem to help people actually snap a photo a little bit better,
Really good.
a little higher conversion rate just to get them to those platforms. The other thing that we're doing is outside the door before anybody comes in, before anybody sees me, I set up a table. I put two things on the table. I put the neighborhood guide that we put. I'll put that there with the MLS sheet on top of it. That way, once again, people are going to take that and then they're going to have access to all those QR codes. The next thing I put next to it is a buyer's guide. And this is one that when I was reworking our business and really digging into how can we increase our conversion rate, I went to a lot of open houses. And one thing that I found is that's a very stressful time because what happens is potential buyer is going to walk into an open house and the number one concern they have is I'm going to be sold to. And it was funny because I felt the same way as an agent going into these open
Yeah.
houses. Like this listing agent is just going to try to sell me this house. I don't want to be sold to. And what I found with putting that buyer's guide out, it almost once again acts as a pattern interrupt. Like they're going to walk up and they're going to be like, why is there a buyer? He's the seller. Like it just throws them for a little bit of a loop. And ultimately it's to provide them value. I don't know where they're at in their home buying journey. I don't know if they have an agent, but I want to get as much value to everybody. I think that's one thing in this industry that doesn't hurt anybody is put value in people's hands. So even if they already have an agent, if I can give them a buyer's guide and it helps their transaction on this house or another one go smoother, that's great. So I'll put that down there. And then I'll just have a sign that says, feel free to take them and please let yourself in. And so that's kind of the setup for getting them in the house. And then I am hugely not a fan of the whole sign in thing. I think that is one thing that's part of the reason that open houses, so many agents have bad experience with the open houses. Nobody signs up or, they get Donald Duck signing up. So I let them come in the house. I normally position myself in the kitchen somewhere. A lot of the time I'll have my computer. I'll try to as low key it as possible. It's not sign in. It's they come in, hey, welcome to the house. Take a look around. The other thing I will describe or I'll explain to them the QR codes. We've put QR codes all around the house so you can learn about the house and the features of this house. Just scan it on your phone, watch the video. Also, if you don't want to do it right now, they're in the packet that you grabbed out at the front door. And then I'll just
Yeah.
let people walk around the house. I think all too often when I was doing it as an agent to learn how to get better at open houses, you'd have the agent that follows you around like a puppy dog. And that was never my style. My thought process is like, I want you to have time with the house so you can envision yourself being there. If I'm sitting there yapping to you about everything about the house, that's not happening. And so I would let them walk around the house. And then, as they go, if they have questions, they would let me know a lot of the time. But the other thing it did too is, especially when open houses were really popping, I didn't need to be there because the QR codes were around the house to answer questions and that type of stuff. So I could have a lot of people in one open house at one time and not have any issues with this strategy.
Yeah, so good. And I will tell you too, that's one of those we did that also we would do where we would have like for instance, we were in a neighborhood that had walking trails or we were in a neighborhood that had a specific amenity. We would do a very specific like map or whatever for the neighborhood or something that they might want. And then what we would do is we would just have one and be like, look, hey, can we take this? I'm the worst realtor ever. I've only got one, but if you like, I've got a PDF version. I can text you or email you. And that's been a low key way to just get that contact information if we want it. Because literally, typically, if they're asking for something, we're pretty good from that perspective. All right, here's where I think people drop the ball. Is that they have the open house, they have people come through. It's the post open house follow up, and if there's a system. Do y'all do anything in particular on that end, and what does that look like for y'all?
Well, and one thing too, normally, because obviously we always want to ask for the sale, ask for the lead, try to get the
Right.
contact info. So one thing, after people have toured the house and are on the way out the door, obviously this is if I have, there's not super busy or anything, but I will always walk up to them and say, hey, would you mind giving that pamphlet, the neighborhood packet that we have, to your buyer's agent? And most of the time, this is when I'd find out if they have a buyer's agent or not. If they
Right.
don't have a buyer's
It's a great
agent,
idea.
if because they'd say, oh yeah, no problem, I will. A lot of times, like, oh, we're not working with anybody. Oh, that's great. Hey, I actually made a video on that buyer's guide, but it's a video format. It's a lot more in depth. Do you mind if I send you a text message with it?
Correct.
And that was one thing that by the time, they'd probably been in the house 10, 15 minutes by now. I hadn't literally sold them anything. I hadn't hounded them. I would get some people that say, no, 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 I don't want that. That's fine. By this
Yeah.
point, they've probably scanned some QR codes. They're probably going to start seeing my face when they open up the platform. But I would always at least try to ask for that because I think, it's our job. And the other big thing is I can go back to my seller and say, hey, we got these people that I'm going to reach out to. And if nothing else, get feedback for, how it showed and improvements. That's one thing too, that I think this whole process is all about to me marketing. And one of the big things with marketing for me is gathering data to make better informed decisions down the road between you and your sellers. So
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. It's really good. So, is there any type of follow-up program after the fact that you do? I
so
mean, I know obviously when they're leaving there, but is there anything y'all do after it's over?
Yeah. So we go back through and do post open house door knock. And kind of my thought process with this one is if you watch half of a season, you're not just of a TV show, you're not just going to stop in half of the season because you want to know how it ends, right? And
Right.
so what we're going to do is we're going to reapproach the neighborhood again. Once again, we're going to make a different little packet, and it's going to have a QR code to a video that's going to give a breakdown of the transaction. Now, obviously, some of this stuff you might have to get your seller's permission to do, which normally they're fine with it. But the whole goal is to go back and reapproach the neighbors and say, hey, this is how it went. And the reason that we do this is neighbors a lot of times want feedback. And let's face it, a lot of times they're not looking up what the house actually closed for when you post it as sold on the MLS. And so this way we could go back and we could say, hey, we listed this house. It sold for $10,000, $15,000 over list price. We had 30 offers, or we had, it really gives them a real sense of what is going on in the neighborhood with sales. And also you're providing that authority piece that like, hey, we are in this neighborhood to help you and provide you with data. And then I will also always give them a business card too, and say, hey, if you guys are ever thinking about selling, I'd love to represent you, or at least have an opportunity to sit down with you and talk about that process.
Yeah, no, this is great. And plus that is that opportunity too. I mean, obviously, when you've had in the market we've been in, to tell them the success story or to give them the story and give them that information, they're gonna let you know if they're thinking about selling. They're gonna, it's gonna come up. And so I love the follow up that way. Are y'all doing any direct mail with any of these things? I mean, you mentioned a little bit, sometimes you do postcards. Anything that you do? I mean, I know you mentioned y'all don't do the just listed, just sold, but is there anything you do in these neighborhoods at all?
So we were doing some direct mail, especially if this was, we were doing a farm. So we had a neighborhood that was farm
Right.
that was
Yeah.
consistently getting direct mail. Around the open houses, we were trying to do a direct mail as much as possible, sending out like a version of that neighborhood packet prior to the open house. One thing we were finding there for a while is stuff was moving so quick that by the time they got it,
I get
it
it.
was already pending. But we are, trying to do direct mail because that's one thing like, once again, to me, it's all about eyeballs and information. And
Yeah.
if we can get more eyeballs and information on a property, even after it's pending, that's going to give feedback to me, especially. So I have more data for my next listing appointment within that neighborhood. So
Yeah.
we were utilizing some direct mail as well. We did do some like just like sold postcards. We never saw a huge, I don't have any data points on that, how it really helped, but we were utilizing those once the property would close just to be a blanket over the neighborhood to help,
Yeah.
solidify what we were doing up until that point.
Yeah, that's perfect. Josh, as we kind of wrap up, if someone look, first off, let me say this. This has been super helpful. I've got a good night. I've got a full page notes here, but and I know a lot of people got some value out of this. One thing I would say is obviously how can they find you? People find you, but and I would say also, the way that I found you was not just for what you're doing locally, but the way that you're sharing details and information for the industry. So I appreciate the book. I appreciate everything you're doing. But if people wanted to find you, what's the best way for them to find you?
Pretty much every social media platform, it's real estate broker Josh. You can look me up. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Yeah, pretty much anywhere. So, real estate broker Josh, you'll pretty much find me.
Hey, we're going to have you back on for the YouTube ads and some other things coming up in the future, but I appreciate you. I know you guys got some value out of this. Go follow Josh. Also, make sure you let him know how much you appreciate this, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.